Hi, I'm Femi OK. You're watching the stream. Today, there are young people across the African continent who are fighting for their future. This is how Hilda Nakabuye described the crisis at the World Mayor Summit in 2019.
I am lucky that I am still surviving, and I'll not take this chance for granted because people are dying every day. I made a decision to protect the only place I call Earth. I will tell you that we are a generation of scared people, but very ambitious, very united, very persistent, and very good at action.
You will get to meet 3 climate warriors from the African continent who will be able to tell you pretty much anything you want to know about the climate crisis on the African continent. You can test them. They are ready for your questions and your comments. If you're on YouTube, jump into the comment section and be part of today's show. I am going to greet the guest. The guest will say hello to you. Hello, Hilda. You just saw Hilda right there at the World Mayor Summit in Copenhagen just over a year ago. Hilda, it's really good to see you. Introduce yourself to our global audience.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Hilda Flavia Nakawi. I'm a climate activist from Uganda, and I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. Hello, Elizabeth. Welcome to the stream. Tell the world who you are. What do you do?
Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Wathuti. I'm an environmentalist and a climate activist from Kenya. And I'm also the founder of an initiative called Green Generation Initiative, which I'm sure I'll mention during the conversation. And also currently heading the heading campaigns at the Wangari Maathai Foundation, and also Daima Consortium that works on protecting green spaces. Thank you.
Fantastic. Great to have you. And hello, Oladusu. Nice to see you. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much. My name is Oladoso Adenike from Abuja, Nigeria, the founder of Pilot Climate that specializes in peace, security, equality in Africa. I'm an eco-feminist and I specialize especially in the Lake Chad region, seeing the fact that it needs to be restored within this decade for it not to dry up. And I'm also the initiator for the Fridays for Future in Nigeria. Thank you.
Eco Warriors, good to have you. Let me start here on my laptop. So we talked about on Twitter, young activists across Africa leading efforts to combat the climate crisis. Can young climate activists save Africa? This is what Alex said. I believe so. It may take a while because climate crisis is not at the forefront of the African problem, but it should be. If youth activists continue to sound the alarm, it will reach a wide range of people, especially in remote areas. Information is the key. I like this because it's so honest, not at the forefront of the African problem. Elizabeth, when you see Alex saying that, why is it when people are actually being impacted by the climate crisis right now on the African continent, why is it not number one priority?
I would say the first thing really goes back to what he has mentioned there, that information is definitely key. So it happens that for the most people that stand to be the most affected, they don't have the needed information to know how they need to adapt to the crisis. And also, on the other hand, you find that the stories of the African continent are not told to the world. And especially because, apart from being the continent that is greatly affected by the crisis, it is in the same continent where people are working on solutions, where young people like us, like Hilda, like Adenike, and other young people out there are trying to work out solutions to try and address the climate change impacts. So if we can get to hear these stories from the African continent, then I think we can get to have the climate crisis also be at the forefront when it comes to the African continent. And I think we need to keep reminding people that in Africa, it is no longer a future concern. It's happening right now. And all these stories of what is happening need to be told, and they need to be informed out there to the world so that people can start acting with urgency.
Let me show one example, Hilda, of what is happening. That's a very tangible example. So people watching can think, oh, this is not just theory. This is happening to people's lives. So I want to take you to East Africa, to Ethiopia, where, and this is all over East Africa. There's a major issue right now with locusts. And so these pictures are from quite recently, I believe from October of this year. This is what locusts are doing to farmland, not just in Ethiopia, but through East Africa. Have a look.
Midhaan waa hundumaa mishingaa ta'e giraanaa ta'e waa maashoo waa guutuu mutuutti godhee fixee jira. Hektaara 6 na jalaa balleesse ijoollee beeksisa 9 qaba.
Hilda, I know you've come across locusts in Uganda. Can you use that tangible example to show how the climate crisis is threatening Uganda?
Well, thank you. Specifically, Uganda, about the start of this year, we had locusts that were going on all over. And up to now, they have actually just reduced, but still the problem was very big. And also, we have been suffering the same effect with the floods and the rising waters of Lake Victoria, which is the world's second largest freshwater body. So, because Uganda is an agricultural country. We depend most on agriculture, be it feeding, be it economy. Most of us depend on agriculture, and seeing such devastating effects of the climate crisis actually affects us most. It affects us more because this is our life, this is our future, and without agriculture, we are nowhere. So this climate crisis exacerbates every problem. It exacerbates every issue, making it worse for our lives, for the lives, especially of the children, because they have a longer future to stay. So climate change makes everything worse, from floods killing people, claiming people's property, claiming traditional lands, making people climate refugees in their own country, and worse.
Let me just bring in Adenike. Adenike, I'm going to put this question on YouTube or from YouTube to you. So Tumi says the African continent doesn't contribute that much to climate change, though it's mostly Europe and USA that contribute more. And I think they're really talking about CO2. So when you look on a map, and I'll show it to you in just a moment, audience, you'll see who are the big emitters. And there's only South Africa, and it only emits a little bit. I'll show you that in a moment. But that is a point, Adenike, that is really well made by Tumi. Tumi makes that point, and you say what?
Okay, so I'm going to say this, that is the irony of the whole thing, that Africa does not emit much, but yet we are feeling the impact of the climate change crisis. That means we are disproportionately affected by the climate change crisis. And that is why we need to be united, because climate refugees connect countries to each other through migration and other forms. So if we don't take the necessary action needed, it's going to affect us, because climate crisis knows no boundaries. So as it affects us, it's going to affect you as a refugee form. And these are things that we are trying to prevent, that climate crisis does not become an international crisis, because right now in Nigeria, it poses a threat to our national security, because it's leading to farmer herdsmen crisis as a survival of the fittest, because those people in the northeastern part of Nigeria are faced with drought and deforestation, especially from the shrinking lake chart, that have displaced millions of people, because currently more than 30 million people depend on the lake, but it has shrunk by 90% since 1960. So it's becoming a crisis on a daily basis, because we are faced with multifaceted crisis that ranges from drought, floods, food insecurity, and all of this poses threats to our national security because it's going to lead to loss of livelihood. And when there's loss of livelihood, the threat to our society becomes high because the alternative livelihood that people seek to get is going to affect the society. And that is why I call myself an eco-feminist, because in the center of all of this, women and girls are directly or indirectly affected because they can be sexually abused in the process of going to work for the family, or they can be given out for marriage at the early stage. So we need the whole world to be united for us not to be left behind, because right now we are left behind despite the fact that we are not the largest emitter. Everyone needs to curb its emission.
All right,
Enough
so
of the fact
Adenike,
that they're focusing on
pause for a
Africa.
moment.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking about is action. What are you doing? I hear that you already know that
Okay,
you're
yeah.
in.
Okay,
Adenike,
yeah,
hold
in
on a moment, because
Nigeria.
I want to share it with your sister Eco Warriors. All right, let me just share the conversation a little bit. I'll come right back to you. So I'm just wondering, what are you doing, Elizabeth? In Kenya, there's such a rich tradition of honouring nature. Wangari Maathai, the Nobel laureate, started a mission to plant trees, to actually educate young people. And that is something that you have carried on. Can you tell us about that and the education process that you're going through with schools in Kenya? Because it is a massive project. It's not a young person doing let's plant a few trees. It involves so many schools. It is a real system for how do we get young Africans to care about climate change? Tell us more about your work.
Thank you so much. So, and I'll begin maybe by saying that the best way we can also get young people to get to be concerned about the environment is to get them involved and to also have them connected to the environment. So, I personally got connected to the natural world at a young age. And I always say that having grown up in the central highlands of Kenya and in the most forested region in Kenya, I got to love nature and to connect to the natural world at a young age, because I recall the trees ahead of me, the bushes beside me, and even being able to see it close to clean streams, which are very rare in parts of the world today. So these are the things that gave me that strong connection to nature. And I felt that in the process, I also began to learn from nature. And in the process, I began to feel the pain of nature caused by environmental degradation. And that means that things like people throwing trash out of car windows, seeing people cutting down trees would anger me in the process. And also the late Professor Wangari Maathai was my greatest source of inspiration. And I would say that I really admired her work, and I was really interested to understand why she was doing the things that she was doing back then. And that is why today, when I get to a park in Kenya like Uhuru Park, a park like a forest like Karura Forest, I now understand why she was, because she was doing it for the future generations. And so I think this love and connection for nature made me realize that people can definitely get a not natural call to action to address environmental challenges. And they can do that if they get to connect directly to the natural world. So that is why I decided to found an initiative to also get other young people and children to get that same love and that same natural connection to the natural world when they are still young. So this initiative is called Green Generation Initiative. And it all began with one tree seedling. And one tree seedling has grown into hundreds and grown into thousands of tree seedlings. And of course, the campaign was to make sure that every child in every school in Kenya gets a chance to plant and adopt a tree each in their school compound, because I personally planted my first tree at the age of 7 years. So I'm trying to inculcate that tree growing culture among children, because we plant so many thousands of trees and trillions of trees in the world. But the biggest question is how many of those trees actually get to grow up to maturity. So the best way we can get young people is to educate them, and not just teach them, but educate them practically. Because when a kid plants a tree and they nurture them and watch it grow, then they are learning and getting connected to the natural world. And so that is how this campaign is trying to nurture the young children to be conscious
Right.
of the environment at a young age. Yeah.
Okay. YouTube, thank you for your questions. These are great questions. This is Johnson. Hilda, I'm going to
Yeah.
give you Johnson's question on YouTube. Johnson says, yes, we the young ones, we are ready to change Africa, but we need support from the elders too. Hilda, will you share that story about you discussing climate change with a professor and how the professor reacted?
Um, Thank you, Johnson, for that question. Well, by that time I was at campus and I was in second year, and then I approached my professor at school to ask him about climate change because he was teaching about procurement and sustainability. And I really wanted to know more and how he is visioning this whole process of e- electronic procurement. So when I approached him, he told climate change that not exist, and then that we children, like youths and students, can do nothing about whatever is happening. And then he told me that climate change is God's decision. It's God's plan. Whatever God planned will happen. If God planned the drought, then the drought will happen. If God planned rain, then rain will happen. If God wants to end the world, then He will end the world. And then He said, we have no control over it, and there's nothing that the young generation can do to create change or to make any difference. And I strongly disagreed with him because I
And
believe that we, the young
yeah,
generation, have everything. We have the power. The power is in our hands. And not only as the young generation, but also politicians and leaders, we have these resources. We have the technology that can help us transform the world into a more sustainable planet. We have all whatever it takes, but what is missing is the political will and this inaction. It's that greed and selfishness that is in our communities, in our leaders, and making them not to make the right decisions. Right now, what we need are concrete steps to be taken in order to combat the climate crisis, because it's not something that is going to happen in the future. It is something that is here. It has killed millions and millions of people, and it's still claiming lives. It's making our lives very, very miserable. Most of the people in the global north haven't really faced these direct impacts of climate change, but I'm telling you that we people in the global south face these things each and every day. We have to cope up with the same issues: floods after floods, droughts after droughts, hunger. The climate crisis is impacting us more than the COVID crisis. Thank you.
Hilda, when I showed that clip of you, that was last year at the World Mayor Summit, you were visibly upset, really upset. What impact did that have on the people who listened when you pour out your passion and your understanding of how the climate crisis is impacting Africans right now? What impact did that have?
Well, actually, talking about it now, I really feel disappointed. Like I felt even after, because that was the first time I shared my story, and I thought that everyone will understand what Africa is really facing, what we really pass through each and every day. But to my dismay, I was very disappointed because there is no action being taken since then. It's like everything was in vain. And yes, you talk about this story, and then everyone comes up to you after talking, and then they're like, "Oh, you're inspiring. That's a great story." And then this same thing happens. You're inspiring.
So
You're
Hilda,
being in
do
no
you
action.
if I may, do you roll your eyes then when people say that you're inspiring? Are they patronizing you? Is the global north patronizing you?
Well, it looks more than that, because if I am inspiring you, then what do I inspire you to do? I mean, it shouldn't end at inspiring. It should provoke an action. It should make an impact, but
Yeah.
there's
Let's
nothing.
Absolutely.
yeah. Let me. I'm going to allow a little bit of inspiration into this program because it comes from Elvis Paul Tandem, and he's the coordinator of the Great Green Wall Initiative. If you don't know, Google it. You'll be amazed because Africans have been being climate warriors for a very long time. This is what Elvis had to say to you, ladies. Have a listen.
Policymakers on the continent have shown a lot of openness to work with these young people. They are those who can make the change that they want to see because they are the future. So, my advice to them is to turn up the heat, continue being activists, continue to engage their local and continental policymakers. And at the level of the African Union, we've seen a lot of openness to work with them.
I want to show you the Twitter page of this climate warrior here, this climate activist. His name is Dixon. And Dixon told us early on the stream that the biggest challenge for climate activists on the African continent was the leaders, because the leaders were only thinking about the next election. They weren't thinking about the future for young people and for future generations. Adenike, when we talk about concrete actions, when we think about beyond the, oh, you're so inspiring, you are a wonderful young climate activist, what do you want? What action do you need?
Okay, thank you so much. I think the main and the first actions that are needed to meet our demands and to make it a reality is a political will. Because without political will, we can't drive our agenda. And that is why we are trying to engage at the top and most importantly at the grassroots level, because we know that we need to balance up all of these things. As young people, we are seeing that the future will be full of crises if actions are not taken now. And that is why we are calling that the Paris Agreement should be rigid form, because that is the roadmap towards creating a sustainable society for all. So we are calling on actions because we are seeing commitment for our world leaders. So we want those commitments to be attainable, not just to say it, but to also work
But
the talk.
but Adenike, if I may, so I know it's a little tricky because you're on the phone here, but this political will is the answer to every single problem that every country ever had. So what do you want them to do? Because they're not doing it right now, are they? What do you want to happen? Political will doesn't mean anything.
Yes. Yeah, there's a need for funding, yes, because the
Money.
movement for climate action gets stronger when we are empowered to do more. I think that is what is needed because it's a key priority for us here in the global south that activists really need to be funded for initiative and in coming up with innovations that is going to help to transform our society. So the major focus too should be on financing our actions that are needed for us to upscale our action further and in gaining the necessary attention that we need, because we know that the climate crisis here is happening every second, every day, and it's now a threat to our peace and security. And that is why we need more actions, more attention for Africa, financing for adaptation, for mitigation, and for other funds to see that it comes true. And I must mention this, that the role for climate education, according to what Elizabeth said, is very important because that is the first step that we must take in creating the society or creating the change that we want before bringing up an initiative. Because in a country like mine, climate education is going to affect our diversity because we have different religion, ethnicity, and everybody coming from different backgrounds. So if we don't educate the society, it might look like brainwashing them when initiatives come on board, or the initiatives can be used they can use it to their disadvantage. So that climate education must play a role in our society, especially when I graduated from school. That was when I thought it important for me to educate the people in the school because we don't have it yet in the curriculum. So there's a need for us to have it in the curriculum so that people grow up sustainable and can solve the society problem. Because if you don't know that a problem exists, you can't solve it. So there's a need for us to create that first change, that education in them, especially where I had my undergraduate studies, where there's a permanent crisis. So people take it as,
Adenike, thank you so much. And Hilda and also Elizabeth, really appreciate you bringing your advocacy here to the stream and showing it's going to be an uphill challenge about how you approach the climate crisis in Africa, but we hear your passion and your determination. More passion and determination happening on Instagram Live. Let me tell you who we're going to have coming up in just a little bit. Sunday through Wednesday, we always have an Instagram Live conversation at the AJ Stream IGTV account at 20:30 GMT. We are going to be connecting with a member of Fridays for Future, Mauritius, and having a really deep conversation about how young people globally are trying to impact the climate crisis, how they're driving it, how they're shaping it, and how they're getting the rest of us to get on board. So that will be on AJ Stream's Instagram Live at 20:30 GMT from Monday. That's it for today's show. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.